Boyo alert! Welcome back, people, to Dante's Inferno. We're not going to do a single introduction this time. We're going to crack on into it. If you have not seen one of the previous lectures, do not worry. Put them in your watch later. Watch them later. For now, we have more pertinent matters. We need to enter hell itself. The plot of this particular canto is they literally enter hell. So this is where the book really starts to begin, and it starts to get quite terrifying, and just rereading it then, making notes for you, started to get serious goosebumps. Like, the consequences of this psychologically is unbelievable. So let's crack on into it, people. Canto 3 of Dante's Inferno. Through me you go into the city of weeping. Through me you go into eternal pain. Through me you go among the lost people. Justice is what moved my exalted Maker. I was the invention of the power of God, of his wisdom, and of his primal love. Before me there was nothing that was created, except eternal things. I am eternal. No room for hope when you enter this place. And these are all in quote marks, all of that I just said. These words, in an uncertain colour, were written above a gate, and when I saw them, I said, Master, it is hard to follow the meaning. So to catch you up, Dante and Virgil have decided to go off on an adventure into hell. Virgil has received this message from the heavenly hierarchy of angels, from the Virgin Mary, down to Saint Lucy, down to Beatrice, down to Virgil, and now he's got to try and guide Dante into hell so that he can get out of the forest. And they've arrived at a place where there are words written on the wall, words written above a gate, and these are very, very famous words, and essentially it's a proclamation of what they are about to enter into. Imagine in all those movies and all those video games where you enter the gates of hell. This is the original gates of hell, standing right here. Just go through that and I'll break it down for you. So it says, through me you go into the city of weeping. Now, the reason why it is a city, why heaven is considered a city, why you create heaven on earth in a city, Zion will say, why hell is a city, is because cities are the canonical unit of human culture. It's how humans organise themselves, is amongst cities. So you have culture versus nature. So if a place which is where human beings are created by God, which is an abstraction of the spirit of culture across eternity, then it makes sense that it would be a city. But not all cities are good places. Through me you go into eternal pain. This is a terrifying idea. So it says eternal pain. Now, if you think of the Inferno as a reflection of people's psychological states, of their punishments almost, then what you're going to see is if every single person acted like the type of sin that was localized to a particular level of hell, then that's what the world would look like in its totality. Not only is this the Christian fate of you in the afterlife, but this is also your current psychological state and the state of the collective psyche of the entire world if we all acted like that. It's eternal and it is pain. It says, through me you go among the lost people. Lost people. Well, we've already known that Dante is off of the way, don't we? Where he's trying to go up the hill and he can't do it. And the hill is the proper way. And these people who are in hell are lost. So in many ways, Dante may be entering a place which he knows that he himself is doomed to. And that is quite a horrendous, difficult thing for him to realise, as you'll come to realise in a moment. The sign also says, justice is what moved my exalted Maker. The concept of justice is very interesting here, because it's implying that the people in hell get what they deserve. Now, people, cynical modern people, seem to consider the Old Testament God as being unnecessarily oppressive, that he's picking out random people and he's mean to them. But if you consider God to be the spirit of culture as such, then if you disobey the proper way, you end up in hell. It's not a personification of a human being arbitrarily deciding where you go. No. You get what you deserve. You don't get to behave any way you want and to get your cake and eat it too. You get what you deserve. And there's an interesting concept here, where if you say justice, that implies that unless God was unnecessarily tyrannical, that you have free will in choosing how to live your life. Because if you didn't have free will, it wouldn't be justice. It would be the natural result of the way you behave. But justice is you're behaving a certain way and you get what you damn deserve. So everyone in here is here on their own free will. And Dante actually expands that later on in this canto to be everyone that's in hell has voluntarily decided to go into hell. He makes that level of voluntary acceptance far more overt as you get closer and closer to what actually hell looks like. So you take your psychic state where you might be thinking to yourself, I don't want hell, I just find things really difficult. And Dante goes, no, you do want hell, which is why the way you're behaving in your certain way. Very difficult stuff, man. So, we'll carry on here. Another part of the sign says, before me, there was nothing that was created. So before me, meaning before hell, it's like the gates of hell speaking, there was nothing that was created. So it's as if morality itself, this concept of good and evil and your eternal fate, transcends human life. It was there before us. It's a presupposition to our own existence. Because if human beings existed and then there was morality, then morality might be something a little bit more arbitrary. But to consider morality, and this may be the most accurate way of considering it, to be an eternal premise, that seems to make more sense. And if you consider morality to have evolved and emerged over the course of evolutionary history, this makes perfect sense, that there was a morality before there was Homo sapiens sapiens in its current formation. There's always been a morality, and we're built with that, nested within us so down deep. Morality regulates our behaviour with each other. And without that regulation, we wouldn't exist. Not us, because our parents wouldn't have been able to survive and reproduce and look after each other. But way back in time, we would have destroyed ourselves. So this concept of morality is so deep, so old, and so important. So, Dante's obviously seen this sign, and he turns to Virgil and he says, Master, it is hard to follow the meaning. Now, I don't know about you, but I've read far more difficult poetry than that last section. In fact, this book is very easy to read, depending on the translation that you pick up. So I don't know why Dante finds this meaning difficult. He is a well-versed Catholic man. He understands scripture. He's well-read in Thomas Aquinas. He's even very familiar with Aristotle, which is how the medieval mind used to work. You'll find most people today can't understand Aristotle. It's too complicated. But Dante here I think he's just scared, quite honestly. Because imagine if it was you there, and you have your guide, this guy you admire so much, and you've looked up to, whoever that may be for you. Someone in the comments before has said that their particular Virgil will be Kanye West. And you might get cynical about it. It's like, no, maybe. Because whoever the person who you see the most admiration in would be your Virgil. Whoever spontaneously has that, because they represent the way. They would be your guide out of the forest and towards the place you're meant to be. So imagine you turning to your particular Virgil and you saying to them, it's like you quivering and saying, deferring to them, being like, this is terrifying, can you please tell me what it means, just to be sure. Just to be sure. I think that's what that means there. So Virgil, he turns back to Dante and he says, so he answered as a man who understood. Here you must leave all wariness behind. All traces of cowardice must be extinguished. We have come now to the place where, I have told you, you will find the people for whom there is only grief. Those who have lost the benefit of the intellect. End quote from Virgil there. So he starts off by saying, you must leave cowardice behind. So Dante said, what does this mean? And Virgil has translated this into what you have to do. So it seems kind of abstract and scary, but he's told him basically exactly what's going to happen and what you need to do. And the presupposition to going into hell is you must remove all cowardice. And that's fascinating. In the last lecture, we touched on the idea that cowards are the first people to go to hell in the Bible. And this is exactly why. Because if you are a coward, well, you'll find out later on in this canto exactly why you can't be a coward. Virgil also says in that section, you will find the people for whom there is only grief. Yeah, only grief. So all joy has already been destroyed in their lives by their own choice. So if you take up a bad habit, for example, that will eventually almost immediately start eroding your meaning in your life. It will start eroding your positive mindset. You'll start to feel terrible. And what happens if your life was completely consumed by that? That you reached a threshold, which in this Christian literature would be represented as death, which is the crossing over point between this world and the next. But what if you reached a threshold where there was no going back? You took yourself just that little bit too far, and all you had was hell and pain. That's this idea. There is no joy for you. Once you've crossed over, there is no joy for you. There is only grief. You will be full of regret. You'll be full of pain. You'll have to live with this thing, whatever this vice is of yours, being your master. Terrifying stuff. And he says, those who have lost the benefit of the intellect are here. Well, the intellect represents sort of the rational decision-making factor. So they can't make other decisions. They're stuck. They're forced. They have to do certain things. Either because the will of God or Satan has said to them, you must do this, and is controlling them. And in a Jungian perspective, that's actually correct, where a lot of the time the Jungian self or the figures within the collective unconscious are actually controlling you and making you do certain things. It's not your ego making the decision. But at the same time, it's you've already lived life up to this point where you aren't the intellect anymore. You know, you are what you repeatedly do. You are this sin. You're now a part of it. The sin exists in the collective meme sphere, and we all feed it. And what you've done is you fed it a bit too much, and up you go. You're sucked up into that. And you're stuck there forever. I'm very down today, people, apparently. I'm getting quite into this in kind of like a severe way. With that, he put his hand on top of mine and looked glad, which made me feel comfortable. And so he led me into that secret place. So Dante, it's clear that Dante's not strong enough to do this, because he needed a pep talk from Virgil in the previous canto in order to carry on. And he still needs Virgil as his guide. That's a presupposition here. It's like, you can't do it alone. Now, his immediate guide is Virgil, his master, but Virgil also isn't doing it alone. He's doing it from the heavenly hierarchy. There is some level of transcendent good which is able to guide you and means that you're not alone. That's the idea that God is always watching you. And this idea pops up time and time again throughout all of Christian literature and secular literature, because we're still running on the coattails of Christianity. So they head off into this secret place. Immediately they go into it. And immediately you get a description of what it is. Here there were sighings and complaints and howlings, resounding in an air under no stars, so that at first I found myself in tears. Yeah, that's pretty bad. So they've arrived in a place. So imagine they're going underground, which is where hell always is. Heaven is up, hell is down, something like that. And there were sighings, complaints, and howlings. So out of all the words that you could speak, some of the most unpleasant ones, the most unpleasant things to come out of your mouth. You'd rather live in a world where there wasn't howlings and complaints and sighings. They're a bad thing. They reflect something is very, very wrong. Or maybe something is very, very right because you deserve exactly what you've landed yourself into. That's the idea here. And he says they were resounding in an air under no stars. And what do stars represent? We've covered this in a previous lecture. The stars represent something bright that lights up the darkness, a symbol of hope that's transcendent above you. You know, all of your ancestors have seen the same stars as you. You all wish upon these stars. But there is no stars. The hope is gone. That's it. Literally gone. And then Dante immediately broke into tears. Completely and utterly destroyed already. A jumble of languages, deformities of speech, words which were pain with intonations of anger, voices which were deep and hoarse, hands clapped together, made altogether a tumult round and round, unceasingly in that air in which all was colourless, just as it might be in a perpetual sandstorm. So he begins there by saying a jumble of languages. So you can obviously interpret this as people from all over the world are in hell. And I think that's what he means there. But the clever thing about great works is everything has multiple layers of meaning stacked on top of each other. So I actually think a jumble of languages is a play off of the idea. And I've not seen this in scholarly work either, so feel free to comment and disagree with me. A jumble of languages could be an anti-version of speaking in tongues. Where when people speak in tongues, like the disciples did at Pentecost, they were speaking a strange language, but it made sense at the level of morality, at the level of the heart. Whereas these people aren't making any sense. So rather than speaking the divine words, they can't do that. They're incapable of reaching the heart. Something like that. It's interesting that he says that they're in an air which all was colourless. And we'll get on to why colourless is a good symbolism here. Just before we head on, I'm going to call this particular circle, it's called something like the INFERNO by scholars. Dante doesn't name it. It's the threshold between this world and hell. But I'm just going to call it the realm of the forgotten. Because I think that makes sense in modern English. The realm of the forgotten. So you can find out, actually, if you're going to be somebody who's forgotten. And you'll see what your exact punishment is. Which is good fun. And I, who felt my head surrounded by horrors, said, "Master, what then is it that I am hearing? And what people are these, so crushed by pain?" He answered, "That is the manner of existence, endured by the sad souls of those who lived without occasion for infamy or praise. They are mixed with that abject squadron of angels who did not think it worth their while to rebel, or to be faithful to God, but were for themselves. Heaven chased them out, so as not to become less beautiful, and the depths of hell also rejected them, lest the evil might find occasion to glory over them." So go back to the beginning of that there. Dante, he said that his head was surrounded by horrors. And this is interesting, that it's not clear where the boundary between the psyche is and where reality is. You know, Dante would have seen this as he was literally going to hell because he believed in a literal hell. Whereas the modern Jungian interpretation, to try and resurrect the metaphysics in the most accurate way possible, that's actually like scientifically valid, is he does a psychological approach. And it's interesting that Dante uses the term head there. My head is surrounded by horrors. And he's already mentioned that he was full of sleep, and that at the end of this particular canto, he goes back to sleep again, he's knocked unconscious. So it's very interesting that the realm between psyche and reality is very blurry. And maybe our psyche creates our own external reality, so that the hell these people are living in is a projection of their psychic reality. I like that interpretation a lot. That gives it more power. Because if we're living in the realm of cynical new atheism, where they think that religion is just an arbitrary power construction rubbish, then the book loses all power. The book becomes, well, Dante was making up complete and utter nonsense about an afterlife that doesn't exist. It's like a weird fan fiction. And he just basically decided arbitrarily where to put people. But it's not. It's way more sophisticated than that. You can't argue with anything that Dante... Well, you can argue with some things, actually. His conception of Odysseus, for example, is fluffy. But he didn't really read the Odyssey, so that's okay. This stuff is rock solid from a psychic perspective. Like, this book is spot on the entire way through. So that's something to seriously contend with. So he asked Virgil, what am I hearing? What is all this pain? What's going on? And Virgil answers in this little speech. So he says that there are basically people here, they're sad, and they lived their lives before they died without occasion for infamy or praise. So what does this mean? It means they were neutral. They didn't fight for good, they didn't fight for evil. They're just neutral. And that's very interesting. So these people are like sort of in hell, but not really. They're not in the pain of hell, but they are still in hell. It's like they don't really exist. They've been forgotten. They don't even get to deserve hell. Because this is what he says. He says that heaven has chased these people out. They're like, we don't want you because you're going to dilute what it means to actually be good and virtuous. Just by purely existing. And hell have also said, nah, we're not having you around here. And the reason is hell people might find occasion to glory over them. They're a waste of space. They've taken their life, their beautiful potential gifted by the universe. They're made of stars, whatever the Neil deGrasse Tyson quote is. They've taken this beautiful potential and they've completely wasted it. Completely and utterly wasted it. Not even hell will take them. This is the thing. Hell is not occupied by a man called Satan who's trying to get you. Everyone in hell is there voluntarily. It's a choice that you make. So if you don't choose either of them, if the people who didn't live moral lives, I suppose, ended up, or the people who didn't do anything ended up in hell, then that would dilute the meaning of what it means to be in hell, and vice versa in heaven. So they're just forgotten. They just exist and don't exist. They may as well not have lived. Which is really, really sad. It's really sad. So Dante then comes back and says, I said, Master, what is it? Yeah, what is it lies so heavily upon them that they call out as they do? Virgil answered, I will tell you very briefly. They are without even the hope of death. Their blind existence is of such abjection that they are envious of every other fate. The world does not remember them at all. Mercy and justice treat them with contempt. Let us not talk about them. Look and pass on. It's just very sad. Like, reading this, I get very, very sad. It's not like... The emotion I get reading this is, it's such a shame. Because, like, imagine if you weren't remembered by anyone. Because look what Virgil says. He says, let's talk about them. Let's not talk about them. Look and pass on. Virgil won't even acknowledge them. This is an interesting thing, that throughout the Inferno, Dante comes across certain characters from mythology and history, and they talk to Dante, and they seem to be quite keen that people remember them, and that at least their story lives on, right? At least that's something. They have that eternal life in hell, but at least they get eternal life in the minds of people. These people don't even get that. It's like, you don't even speak to them. They shouldn't even register on your radar. They just existed, and now they cease to exist. It's just a real shame. It's got interesting. It says, they are without even the hope of death. Now, of course, they are dead, because they're in the afterlife, right? But death meaning like a crossover point, a threshold between good and evil, an action point. So they exist without action. They're like a forever what if. Just a what if. And it says they're actually envious of every other fate, because this is the thing, like lots of people, especially children do this a lot before it's bullied out of them, but lots of people will actually exist in the world and they'll desire some kind of attention. Not just good attention, but also bad attention. And it's like, even someone coming up to you and saying, hey, how are you, is enough to completely and utterly lift your mood. Right? To say, if you've isolated yourself for a while from people, and then someone says, hey, how you doing, smiles at you, your mood lifts. But these people, no. So they're not even talking to each other either. They're not allowed to. It implies this later on, that they don't really talk to each other. It's just, you're alone. You made no connections of any worth whatsoever in a moral domain. There was no effort to climb the hill. There was no effort to move down it. You chose nothing. You are forgotten. You are a waste. And you now will exist forever knowing that you were a waste. And it's like, that's almost like, that's such a harsh punishment. It's not pain. This is the thing. That's why they're not in hell. It's not pain as such. Like some kind of physical pain, or it's more of a cringe type thing. It's more of a, this is such a shame. So they're walking past these people. Virgil's like, I won't even acknowledge them. Yeah, sorry. He says, and as I looked at them, I saw a flag, flapping wildly as it was carried forward, as if not fit to rest a moment. Behind it came a huge torrent of people. So many that I never should have thought death had been able to undo so many. When I'd recognised a few of them, I saw and knew the shadow of that man, who out of cowardice made the great refusal. I understood at once, beyond all doubt, that this was the miserable and useless gang of those who please neither God nor his enemies. That calamitous crowd, who never were alive, were naked, and their skins blown with the bites of swarms of wasps and hornets following them. Their faces ran with blood from these attacks, and, mixed with tears, it streamed down to their feet, where filthy, creeping creatures swallowed it. That's a good section there. In case I lost you, because I know it's difficult to jump between analysis and me reading it. It's only one voice to you, so I'm doing my best. But so another interesting thing is Doré, the guy who did the illustrations for the Divine Comedy. He actually doesn't draw them. This is fascinating. One of the only scenes he doesn't draw. So he's got, I don't know if you can see this, Dante and Virgil entering hell. And then immediately skips onto the, spoiler alert, the next scene. Not even Doré draws them. Because they're just forgotten. He's like, no. But regardless of that, their punishment is the opposite of what they did in their life. So the literary device that Dante uses throughout the Inferno is to get the people to do what they were doing in real life. So the punishment fits the crime, basically. I mean, in this particular level of hell, he does the opposite. He makes them do what they didn't do in their lives. So he's got them carrying around a futile flag. So there's just this flag that's waving, and they're carrying it forward. And they're walking forward without any kind of rest whatsoever. And what's happening is, it's like flies and things are coming up and attacking them and biting them and making them bleed. And the blood is dripping down to the floor where there's rats or something on the ground that's actually eating their blood and their tears. It's like, what the hell does that mean? So because they're so neutral, they're the opposite of people who follow a flag. And a flag is a representation of a cause. Now, at the basest possible level of this, you would have the flag of good and the flag of evil. But even then, other causes that you choose in your life have a reflection of this within them, or maybe a combination of the two, or it's not completely clear. But they're fighting for something that's moving the world towards heaven or moving the world towards hell, even if they don't know it. These people didn't do that, so now in the afterlife they have to do that. That's their punishment, to do this forever. Because in real life, it's kind of a burden to do that. Isn't it? It's like, it's living life in that way is difficult. There will always be some level of strain there, some level of torment there, either from your own psyche or from other naysayers, hence the flies biting. Flies are kind of an annoying thing that come and bug you, and they hurt you. They don't rip you to pieces, but they kind of hurt you. All the psychological pain of doing what you have to do, the psychological pain of failing at what you're doing, the naysayers coming for you, things like that. And these people, because they didn't do it in their life, it's like, well, what should their punishment be? Now they have to endure their torment, but not just in life, forever. It's like, that's kind of a horrible way to live eternity. Because people, when they do it, they have like a cause to fight for. Most of the time, it's not the ultimate cause to fight for. There is an element of, I'm not, there could be a level higher than this. But these people don't deserve that. They're just stuck doing this. Just the basic, robotic, pointless, crazy movement of chasing an arbitrary flag and being bitten by flies. You must endure the torment without any hope of going up or down. You just get the torment. That's such a shame. I'm going to keep saying this is the circle of such a shame. An interesting thing here as well, Dante says that he recognised a few of these people, because that's what Dante does. Apparently he knows everybody. And he says, I saw and knew the shadow of that man who out of cowardice made the great refusal. Now, this is actually really clever. So there's two things here. Dante clearly means somebody in real life, but he's not saying it. One, because he doesn't want to get into trouble by overtly putting people into hell. And two, because they're forgotten. You don't remember them. You don't get to acknowledge them. So he's not even telling us, like, deliberately. What scholarly consensus is that this great man is Pope Celestine V, or Celestine V. And he was Pope for a period of about 5 months in 1294. And there was a big run-up. He was a very holy man. There was a big run-up to him being Pope. There was great expectations. But he abdicated the throne. And if you think about, not the throne, he abdicated the seat of being, he abdicated the papacy. He wasn't Pope anymore. After about 5 months. It's like, you've taken the ultimate duty of being the figurehead of morality in the Christian world, and you've gone, bye-bye. In you go, first of all, into the forgotten, but you've not taken a stand. You don't deserve heaven. You don't deserve hell. You just existed like, I wash my hands of that. That's not so good. It's almost like a Pontius Pilate type sin in many ways. Specifically that I wash my hands of this. It's like you've done that to life and to morality. If Dante would be in this situation, if he looked at the hill and was like, I wash my hands of that, and then he looked at the she-wolf and the leopard and the lion, and was like, I wash my hands of that, and then there was Virgil who came up to me, he's like, I wash my hands of you, and you just stay there. If you just have the mindset of staying there, this is where you end up. I wonder if this is where you're going. I don't wanna force this on you, but it'd be very useful to know which circle of hell you were going to, so that you could make sure you didn't end up there. Either if you're a Christian who believes in the Divine Comedy as being divine revelation, then that would be very useful, obviously. But otherwise, psychology. So do you feel like your life is a shame? I'm not living up to my potential in a moral sense. Like I haven't got a path. I'm lost. I will be forgotten. Such a shame that you aren't doing what you should be doing, or even what you're doing what you shouldn't be doing. At least that would be something. But no, you're just sitting on your ass. So let's carry on here. So they've sort of walked past these people with their punishment. And when I cast my eyes a little further, I saw people on the bank of a great river. And so I said, Master, if you are willing, tell me. He's being very polite, isn't he? Who are those people, and what is it determines that they have such anxiety to cross? Or so it seems to me in this faint light. So he's seen this river past these people. And a river in mythology is like a crossing point between either like one stage of a journey and the next. It's at the end of the Lord of the Rings series when they all have to go disappear off on a boat somewhere to cross over into the next world. Or even the world between this and the next. The river is a crossing point. And he sees a whole bunch of people down there and he's like, what's determining if they're going over the river? What's determining whether or not they want to go over the river? But he also says that it's got a faint light around. And I think what this means is it's either just trying to set the ambience of hell to remind you're in hell, or it's implying that not even these people can see each other. So they don't even get the benefit of being able to recognise each other. Now, Dante did recognise that Pope bloke, so maybe that throws a spanner in the works, but it just makes it a bit harder. It's like just a bit of strain, you know, not really pain to see in dark light, but it's like, this is kind of a shame. I wish I could at least could I see you? No. You didn't take action. No, your life is a shame. So Virgil answered, these are things you will be told when our steps come to a halt, as they will do on that sad strip of land behind Charon. Then, with my eyes cast downwards out of shame, for fear that what I had said had given offence, until we reached the river, I said nothing. And this is weird, actually, because Virgil's been really lovely so far, but now he's kind of snapped at Dante and basically gone, shut up, just shut up. And Dante's like, oh, like he gets that visceral feel. Like, if your master, if someone you really admired said to you, shut up, how would you feel? I mean, you'd be feeling a little bit embarrassed, but you'd be dropped into chaos, archetypally speaking. You'd be like, oh, like I thought we were like related because I see you as me in the future, the best version of me, and you don't want me. I'm not. Oh, it's not as if I'm not worthy to follow in your footsteps. It's just you're so far down, and I don't really like you in this current moment. Such a rejection of you and your being, in a way. It's like when a girl rejects a guy, it's so painful because she's not only is she saying, I don't want to date you, she's saying, you don't get to breed. You know, it's like there's a deeper meaning to people's words. So this is very harsh. Why would Virgil be snapping at Dante? No one really knows, actually. If you look it up, people are like, no, not really. There are two possible answers. It's like, Either he's really on edge because he's near the place where his fate is. Because remember, Virgil's dead. Now, Virgil is actually in the first circle of hell. So he's actually just over the river. So it's almost like he can see... It might remind him of his journey past this place. And he's like, oh, damn. It puts me in a bad mood. Or it might simply be that what he's going to come up against is such a strange Christian mystery. Like one of the deeper Christian mysteries, like one of the threshold points in the structure of the Christian eternity that Virgil doesn't know. It could be either. Either way, it's not a huge plot point, so there you go. Take with that what you will. And then there came towards us in a boat an old man who was white with brittle hair, calling out, "Woe to you, perverse spirits! You need not hope that you will ever see heaven. I have come to take you to the other side, into eternal darkness, fire and ice. And you who are there and still a living soul, keep well away from those who are dead." But when he saw that I had made no movement, he said, "There are other crossings, other ways for you to reach the shore. Do not pass here. And you should travel in a lighter craft." So they've come to the banks of the river. This strange old man crossing in this boat. And he's spoken to all the people gathered on the riverbank. And basically what he says is, "You're a perverse spirit. Woe is you. You will never reach heaven. Give up all hope of that. You will never reach heaven. I've come to take you into hell. And hell is darkness, fire, and ice. All unpleasant things for human beings." The name of this person is given very, very soon. But then he actually speaks directly to Dante. He recognises him as a living person. And he's like, "Stay away from these people. You can't cross here. You have to take a different route." And that's very interesting. That is very interesting. And you find out why later. So what he says is you should travel in a lighter craft. And I'm not so sure what the lighter craft means. It's something like you aren't going into hell. Like you don't need to bear the toughest burden. But there's some element here to it where like he's there with a job to do. He's the ferryman who takes people from the shores into hell, from death. He decides who's forgotten and who's not, who's worthy of going into hell. And he's like takes him across to the other side. So he's almost like he's got a job to do. He's part of this heavenly hierarchy. And so he's not sure if that's a voluntary thing on his behalf or if like he just exists as that's the way the natural order is and he can't break it. But Virgil says Charon or Charon or Charon. Because Charon just sounds too girly to me. "Do not torment yourself. It is willed there where anything can be done. If it is willed, no need for further questions." He's basically gone, shush, God has told me what to do, or at least something related to God has told me what to do. Calm the hell down. Now, to be fair, this Charon bloke is pretty calm already. Like, he's just seen someone who's alive. You won't see that every day. So Dante's already made clear that like no one else has done this before, except Aeneas and St. Paul. But Charon, he's just chill. He's like, yeah, you're fine. It's like he doesn't have emotions of his own. He's like, this is his job to do, and this is what he does. There's no interest here. I guess in many ways he's in hell, so maybe that's his fate, you know. So there was no more movement of the bearded cheeks of that old pilot of the leaden marshes, around whose eyes there burned red rings of flame. So hearing the divine judgment, the way things are, we'll say, the divine will of the universe, the divine will of God, he was like, okay. And that's it. It's like everything obeys some kind of order. Dante's a very orderly man in this way. And maybe that's why I like him, because I'm very orderly too. But those spirits who were worn out and naked changed colour and their teeth began to chatter. Such was the effect of hearing those harsh words. So he hears those 4 lines from Charon, like, you're going to hell, you're never going to heaven, F you, basically. And they're scared out of their goddamn minds. I should probably mention that the Charon character, and the crossing of a river is actually taken from the Aeneid, which of course is one of Virgil's books, which is so fascinating that Dante is not only taking Christianity, but he's combined it with mythology to create his own work. And it's like, I wonder if Dante considered this to be divine revelation. I wonder. Lots of people did. They pointed at him and said, you've been to hell. It reads like it could be because it's bulletproof and watertight. I mean, it does rely on things like Aristotelian worldview, and it relies on Thomas Aquinas, for example. So maybe not. It doesn't exist in isolation of everything else. You have to understand certain things. Like it builds on previous human undivine knowledge. But this scene is lifted from the Aeneid. Just takes it out of Virgil's work and puts it there. It's fascinating. So these people on the banks of the river, they're shaking with fear, right? And then get this, people, get this. Then they blasphemed God and cursed their parents, the human race, the place and time, the seed, the land that it was sown in, and their birth. And then they gathered all of them together, weeping aloud upon the evil shore, which awaits every man who does not fear God. What? So not only are they now scared, but they snap. They snap and they become basically resentful school shooters. They're blaspheming God. So they're actually speaking out against the divine way, the divine judge. They're like, no, I'm not having this. Cursing their parents, so they wish they were never born, basically, or they hate their upbringing. Something's not their fault. The entire human race. So what's divine in them and divine in you either isn't divine at all, or it's all corrupt. The place and the time, again, outsourcing responsibility outside. The seed. I don't really know what the seed is, but carry on. The land that it was sown in and their birth. They don't really want to have existed. They've snapped. And this is the beginning of them voluntarily realizing that they got themselves here. Through that mindset and that value system, which was just waiting underneath the surface to break out with a little bit of fear, that was what led them to hell. That's why they voluntarily accepted it. They may not have had enough self-reflection to realize that they actually wanted hell, but they did. And this is where we're going to begin to have a bit of a debate among people, where if you sin by your own definition, is that your willpower being weak and you lapse? So it's like absence of will, or your will being overpowered? Or is it your choice? Dante would say it's your choice. Now, I don't know. I don't know specifically. But the most functional way to consider it is that it's your choice, because that way you get power over yourself. And think to yourself, say you're trying to give up alcohol, for example, which would be a sin, and you give in. And you think to yourself, well, I couldn't possibly have not given in there. I had to give in. And then you think to yourself, actually no, because it was my repeated sinning over a long period of time that got me into this addicted state. And that demon in my head built up so powerfully. It was my choice. I made stupid mistakes. It was my choice. Now, whether or not, again, that was your desire in the first place is the point. But Dante is still saying, like, you decided to choose the path you're going down. No mercy. You get what you deserved. And it's brutal. Absolutely brutal. Especially if you've got like a poor upbringing, for example. So that is so brutal. But there is still that spark of divinity within you that before you die, or before you reach that psychic turning point of hell you bring on yourself, something inside you, or call it divine inspiration, will get you to start changing your ways. And if you don't listen to it, then you're in big trouble. There's like a Christian mystery, this free will idea. Do you actually desire hell? Yeah, maybe you do. Because you acted as if you did. Food for thought for you. Very interesting. So this devil Charon, with his eyes like holes, points at them and collects them all together. Whoever dawdles gets a blow from his oar. So he's basically standing there. He's got these enraged eyes. It's like, what the hell is an enraged eye? Like, why is there fire around it? It's like, one, it's really unpleasant to look at. And two, there is no mercy. No mercy. It's like, this is it. There is just justice. In many ways, justice is mercy. Like, at least that's implied from the people who are in this section before we enter hell. It's like, justice would be mercy for them. It's what they desire. But for these other people, it's like, you get no mercy. You get what you goddamn deserve. Get in the thing now. But what's interesting is he's actually not forcing them to do anything. Again, which is fascinating. If you read the text carefully, he's not forcing anyone to do anything. I mean, he's hitting people who don't get in. But it's like, you're still not forcing them, really, to get in this damn thing. So I just want to backtrack for a second, people. Nothing major. We're still going ahead. It says that the people who are on this shore, basically you get there, fundamentally, if you do not fear God. Now, they say that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And I think that's true. So what does that mean? The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So if you understand the nature of cause and effect in your own personal life based in your actions, then you will be scared to death most of the time of the consequences. If you really viscerally, phenomenologically understand that, then that's what makes wisdom, because that will what regulates your behavior. If you don't understand that, then you won't regulate your behavior. So if you don't fear God, then you won't be wise. But anyway, so he's standing there, he's collecting people into his boat. As leaves in autumn, one after the other, are blown away until the branch is given, all of its spoil back to the earth again. So was it with the evil seed of Adam. They threw themselves from that shore one by one. As they beckoned, like birds, as they were beckoned, like birds obeying a call. Fascinating stuff. I have to break this down for you. This is getting key. This is like, you would miss this normally on a first reading. So, it says that first of all, that they're the evil seed of Adam. So, Adam obviously was the fallen man, and he had two sons, Cain and Abel. And Abel was killed, obviously, and then by Cain, and then Cain was cast east of Eden. So all human beings are actually descendants of Cain, which is a descendant of Adam. So the evil seed of Adam. It's like we all have Cain within us. So way, way, way back, half of us was Cain. I don't know who Cain bred with, actually. I'm not sure if that's made clear. It would make perfect sense if it was like an angel or something, so that we're half good, half bad. Because Cain is that representation of resentment and everything that's bad in us. But that's what he's getting at there. And it says that they were beckoned and they got in like birds obeying a call. Again, he's not forcing them to do anything. He's not like, get in the damn thing, sinner. And they're like, no, I didn't mean it. No. Because then you'd actually feel kind of sorry for the sinners. They're getting in voluntarily. They're being hypnotized almost. They're NPCs. They're drones. This is fascinating. And so they went on the dark water. And even before they had been disembarked, another flock had collected on this side. So they're uniformly moving. Like you would expect that if you didn't want to get in the boat, you'd either be fighting him and would probably overpower him. He's one person, right? You could jump on him. Or you could run around and scatter, or you could drown yourself in the water. Because you need a ferryman to come across. Like surely you could hide from him underwater or something, anything, even an attempt at dawdling. But they're not. They're actually lining up uniformly on the banks of the river. It's like, what are you? Why? Why? You're going to hell. Why are you doing this voluntarily? So, my courteous master spoke to me. My son, those who have died under the wrath of God assemble here from every land on earth. And they are ready enough to cross the stream, for the divine justice digs its spurs in, so that their fear is turned into desire. That's the key part. That's like a really key part from the, well, it's all key in this canto, but that's something which took me a while to figure out. The divine justice digs its spurs in so that their fear is turned into desire. Now, maybe this would be easier to get in a different translation. Of course, all the different translations will give you a slightly different version of the story. There'll be a canonical narrative before the postmodernists come out of the woodwork. There'll be a canonical narrative, but it'll be difficult to know precisely what it means. But with the way that they've come up against this ultimate sense of justice, they come to want to enter hell. They aren't forced to enter hell. They're being dragged by their own instincts into hell. The divine system of justice that permeates all of us and decides not just our psychic state now, but the psychic state of the collective in many ways, because we feed into it with our energy. And also, in this Christian terms, our fate in the afterlife. We desire something, and that's what we end up with. If you desire God, you end up in heaven. If you desire hell, you end up in hell. And all it takes is for some of their delusions to break, broken by fear, that they realise that they do want it. They might not be happy about wanting it, but they do want it. That's how they've been acting. It's like, get in the boat, and they're like, I do want to get in the boat. They accept it and they get in. There is no tyranny. This is this key difference, this what this section points out. There is no tyranny here. It's not an arbitrary oppressive God. There is no tyranny. There is only justice. And they come to realise that. And so they step in voluntarily. They can't defy the justice of the universe. No one can escape it. That is so deep that Dante figured that out. That is so deep. It's not tyrannical, it's justice. And you can't escape it. So that even you will go along with the justice. So that is so powerful. Basically, for your life, that means whatever hell is reared in your life by your actions, and if it's not working to be fixed by you, then you actually desire it. It's not just absence of will, it's you desire it. We're coming to the final bit now, people. Thank you for tuning in, by the way. There is no crossing here for any good spirit. This is Virgil. Therefore, if Charon says that he will not have you, you know what sense you may give to his words. So, Dante doesn't want to go into hell. So he doesn't go into hell via Charon. If he wanted to, then he would. But he doesn't. He's not in hell. He's not reached that point yet. So Charon's words reflect the absolute truth cutting through the bullshit of your own delusions. When you realise what you were fighting for all along was evil. So at the bottom of every single action, whether you realise it or not, it's good or evil. If you break any action down, you're like, well, why did you go to work today? Because I had to. It's like, well, why did you have to? Why didn't you do something else? And if you keep breaking it down, it always gets to good and evil. Always, always, always. It's the fundamental basis for all our actions. And early on in the canto, it transcends it all. So Charon's words are the truth that cuts through it and makes you realise, yeah, I'm an evil person. And I get what I deserve. I voluntarily accept that. Because no one in hell is trying to get out of hell. It's very interesting. No one's rioting in hell. Very interesting. When he had finished, the murky countryside trembled so much that even to think of it still leaves me terrified and bathed in sweat. The melancholy land belched out a wind from which there came a flash of carmine, I'm not quite sure, light. That left me utterly insensible, and I fell as a man who falls asleep. There you go, people. That is Canto 3 of the Divine Comedy. What's happened? We've seen the entrance to hell. He's being escorted in by Virgil, and he's seen the criteria it takes to get into hell. And he goes in, and the first people he sees are the forgotten, the people whose lives were a shame. They didn't take any definiteness of purpose, no action whatsoever. There they are. They just sort of exist, but not really, forever, just to exist around. And that the torment that they go through is pointless torment. It's not as if they even deserve to have it. It's like, this is just something you get because it's a shame. It's like, almost like the karma idea that you can't escape something, it'll come back to bite you on the ass later. And then they reach the river Acheron. I believe that's how you pronounce it, but forgive me, I've only seen these words written down, of course. I'm not an Italian man. And I'm a biologist by trade, so I haven't been to any classes on this stuff, ever. They reach this river, and this Charon bloke comes across, who's lifted straight out of the Aeneid, and he's bringing souls across. But the fundamental point here is that they want to go across. Evil is its own living thing. It's its own autonomous thing. It's not a privation of good. It's its own actual thing that exists autonomously in the collective sphere. And the evil people are like... And their ultimate proclamation of it is to curse their very life itself, to wish that being had never been brought into being, and to get into that boat and ride into hell. And with that cheery note, thank you, people. I will see you next week. If you want to support the work that I'm doing here, I have a Patreon account in the description down below. The most popular tier is the Discord, where we have a very large community. We have 30 plus people in there at the moment. No, not all of which are at the tier where you can access everything. They're at sort of like the baseline tier, which I'm running with Stefan Fox at the moment. But you can come in and you can talk to me. You can ask me any question you want. We can hang out on voice chat about 4 or 5 times a week if you took full advantage. And I'd love to see you over there. We can discuss Dante if you want to. Otherwise, anything else we talk about on this channel, or just life. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic day. And I hope this has given you something to chew over. And maybe you'll decide that you don't really want to go to hell after all.